we find a Pinus Coulteri, the so-called Coulter Pine, a well-chosen California native, a beautiful, long-lived, and also easy care tree. Like the oak, they're important to the overall ecosystem and habitat support and mammal and bird support. This is an easy care, long-lived tree. They're slow at the beginning. This is not a fast tree at the beginning, but they're reliable and long-lived. This tree is standing in natural form. It has been unpruned except for a few low lateral limbs to create urban clearance down low under the tree. We can see that a pruning cut made on the Coulter pine will generally heal quite well. They'll sap out vigorously and protect their own wounds themselves. We oftentimes will smear the sap after a pruning cut and close the end grain of that wound as the pruning does occur. Even if that is not done, we see them sap out and take care of their own wounds pretty well. They do not like unreasonable pruning. Unreasonable pruning will kill them. So we have to be judicious and careful, keep the tree in natural genetic morphology. We never lollipop the tree, we never tip it or top it or disfigure the natural form. The tree's natural form is very desirable and aesthetic and does not need to be modified. We do have to choose the site well so that the tree has room to be itself. And some pruning is eventually needed on this species if they're to be kept in an urban setting. Low branching, they'll branch all the way to the ground, so as the tree develops and trunk taper is developed, then you can begin to remove some of the low lateral branches for urban space. The Coulter pine has a very distinctive and recognizable silhouette in the landscape. And after giant, mighty windstorms, what we notice is all the dead needles are blown out of the Coulter pine and they're sparkling clean. And generally, they will shed almost no live tissue. They take the wind really, really well, and they actually require the wind to clean them. The Coulter pine is not one of the pines that we find is a real lifter, buckler, heaver. They're generally fairly well behaved in the urban landscape. That doesn't mean that we can hardscape right up to their trunk. We should avoid that with all trees, really. But we find that it is well behaved and easy care in the landscape. When you start them, try to start them straight up. We want a nice vertical establishment of the main stem. It is in youth a single leading upright form. In maturity they become more decurrent and can have multiple leaders with even descending laterals in mature form. But they don't take up as much space as some pines. Pinus pinea, for example, or Aleppo, or some of the others really require a great deal more space than the Coulter. The Coulter is really a straight up pine and remain fairly compact and complex, especially if left unpruned. They do have a certain amount of transparency, a little more than some pines. They let some sky through. A good landscape tree, a good California native. One of the downsides with the Coulter pine is that it produces a very large, heavy cone. In an urban setting with a lot of human traffic, it might be unreasonable to have this tree close into the landscape in such a way that large cones could drop out of the tree and cause harm. It is a factor that does play into the placement of this species. So if you have room for a tree like this, it is a very good choice. It has a fairly high crown, so again, we would never plant this tree under power lines or overhead utilities. They need straight up crown space, and they would like to be in full sun, of course, like most of the pines. Bottom line for the Coulter pine, it's a hardy, long-lived, well-chosen urban forest tree. They'll take a wide variety of conditions and climate, but they're tough and hardy, long-lived, and reliable. The one precaution would be the placement should honor and respect the vulnerability of the large, heavy cones.